Howdy everyone, today we're taking a look at the 8 1/4 inch Jobsite table saw from DeWalt, model DWE7485. I'm pretty excited to get my hands on this one primarily due to its blade size. 10 inches has been the de facto standard table saw size for a while, so I'm curious how downsizing will affect capacities, cut quality, and noise. Let's get started. Included in the box there isn't a whole lot. We've got the saw itself, the miter gauge, and the blade guard. Definitely no assembly required here. If you are in the middle of a job, experience an equipment failure, and need something to get you back up and running ASAP, this one from DeWalt should work well. Initial impressions on overall build quality are excellent. The matte black powder coating is flawless, as are the welds. Taking a look underneath and we see this is indeed a direct drive saw. The blade shroud, dust port, frame, table, and all drive components are metal. All good so far. The only setup needed is the installation of the fence. It ships and is stored below the table. Keep one hand supporting it in the middle while the other releases the front and back clips. You'll remount it using one of several guide pins. These also dictate fence spacing and alignment. The whole assembly is controlled via a rack and pinion drive system, with the front and rear rollers being mechanically coupled. It works really well and can be adjusted by simply pushing the fence or by using what DeWalt calls the fine-tuning knob. The included push stick is stored in the fence and retained via a clip and spring. This location makes grabbing it mid-cut very easy. Finally, we've got a flip-over low fence for when you're cutting small stock and want better access to it. When not in use, it folds over and snaps very securely into place. For cross-cutting, we've got a miter gauge that's definitely what I would call bare bones. The slide is aluminum while the protractor is stamped steel and lacks any hard stops. To be honest, I think DeWalt could have done a little better here. It's also got a bit of play. However, the tracks are industry standard 3/4 of an inch, so any number of aftermarket gauges will work, like this one from my Delta Contractor style table saw. The power switch is of the standard paddle variety. It also has a flip-down plate that will accept a 1/4 inch lock if that's something you need to worry about. Blade height is controlled by a 2-pinion gear system that drives an adjustment lead screw. It's very smooth. The blade angle is manually adjusted by releasing a lock lever next to the height adjustment handle and sliding back and forth. DeWalt also provides hard stops at 90 and 45 degrees. The throat plate is 3 by 3 3/4 of an inch and is secured by a twist lock. Sadly, at the time of recording, I could not find any aftermarket zero clearance replacements. And that should cover basic machine operations, so let's move on to performance. I was hoping this product, running a smaller blade than usual, would be quieter. To find out if it is, I've got the decibel meter set up in the approximate position a user would stand during operation. I'm seeing 98 or 99 decibels, which really isn't any quieter than a 10-inch Jobsite style table saw and a lot louder than a belt-driven one. Before running some test cuts, I want to run through some alignment checks and adjustments. I'll start by ensuring the blade is parallel to the miter tracks. There are some really accurate ways to do this, mostly involving dial indicators and slides, but I'll stick with the simple way, marking a tooth and then using my combination square to verify its position relative to the track as it rotates. And as far as I can tell, it's good to go out of the box. If you did need to make an adjustment, it's pretty easy. Untighten these 2 bolts underneath the table and pivot the blade. We're also good to go as far as blade squareness. Here I'm making sure that when hard stopped at 90 degrees, our speed square butts cleanly up against the blade. Next, I'm seeing if the fence is parallel with the miter tracks. I'm pressing it against my speed square at the front, locking it, and then repeating at the back. Once again, no adjustment necessary. Here I've got the blade raised all the way up, and we're going to see if the ruler is reading 0. Yes, sir, that's 4 for 4 without any adjustments. Finally, I do need to make a small adjustment to the throat plate so it sits flush with the table. Overall factory accuracy is excellent with virtually no adjustments necessary. I'm really impressed so far. To handle dust collection, we've got a 2.5-inch port at the back. Connecting a wet dry back will require a coupler. Here I've got one from PowerTech plus a reducer to 1 7/8. Being of a smaller blade size, I was curious the maximum thickness one could cut, since this would be the main limitation as opposed to a 10-inch saw. At 90 degrees, I'm measuring 2 5/8. At 45, we're down to 1 15/16. This means we should be good to go running bevel cuts on 2x lumber. Yep, it cuts 3/4-inch plywood without a hitch and doesn't slow down. I got the fence set at 1.5 inches and the blade set at 90 degrees. Let's see how we did. 1.502 inches. I'd call that perfect. Our machinist swear also tells us that we're dead on at 90 degrees. Cross-cutting is just as smooth. So is ripping this 1-inch thick piece of hard maple. Quarter-inch cast acrylic also cuts well. All of these cuts were done with the stock 24-tooth ripping blade. Finish quality is pretty good, but not perfect. We've got a tiny bit of tear out on the plywood and a little bit of chipping on the acrylic. To take this up a notch, I ordered a 40-tooth combination rip and crosscut blade by Freud. Speaking of blades though, the fact that the DeWalt 7485 uses an 8 1/4 will potentially cause problems when it comes to replacements. One can go to Amazon or any hardware store and find 10-inch blades in any configuration one wants. They're everywhere, but 8.25, not so much. Choices are limited and smaller hardware stores might not have any. Changing them is relatively straightforward. The saw comes with 2 stamped steel wrenches. Grab the shaft with one and the nut with the other and turn. With the new blade installed, I'll make those same cuts again and take another look at finish quality. And now we're looking at close to perfection. It doesn't get much better than this right out of a saw. If you're thinking about running a dado stack on this saw, think again. We've only got room on the spindle for 2 8-inch blades for a total of about 1/4 inch. The included blade guard, which up until this point I haven't used, comes with its own riving knife. It auto-adjusts to your cut height as one raises and lowers it, pretty much how all modern table saws work. It also has its own dust extraction port. Kind of nice it's there, but without an overarm accessory, the hose would just get in the way of your outfeed. Swapping between this and the other riving knife is done below the table. Remove the throat plate, unscrew the retention bolt a little bit, and then press to release. While running, this saw will draw 8.2 amps. This is a reasonable number. I've seen some larger saws pull upwards of 12, which puts us in breaker tripping territory on multi-use circuits. 8.2 should be a pretty safe number so long as your breaker isn't otherwise overloaded. Finally, when we're packing up for the day, DeWalt provides storage space for all standard accessories. The miter gauge slips in the rear. The riding knife or blade guard has its own bracket on the right side of the machine. And of course, the fence stores underneath the table in exactly the same place we've removed it from earlier. I also picked up the DeWalt folding table saw stand, mostly because Amazon had a Prime Day bundle. If you're looking for an easy way to transport, store, and quickly set up a workstation, this is a good choice. It's really stable and kind of made for this saw. It's easy to wheel around, stands upright for storage, and then unfolds in about 10 seconds so one can get to work quickly. Overall, I think this is a great saw, and DeWalt knocked it out of the park. Its only 2 disappointments are the fact that it's no quieter than larger 10-inch Jobsite saws, and the fact it really can't take a dado stack. Otherwise, it's extremely well built, and from the factory, accuracy is outstanding. Okay, that's all I had today. Take care.